United States President Donald Trump has created a special fund for Ukraine, and this is changing everything right now. Donald Trump is determined to help American companies profit from the reconstruction of Ukraine, and this is a good sign. The United States President initiated the creation and headed the American Investment Fund for the reconstruction of Ukraine. This was announced today by United States Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. In fact, this means that Donald Trump himself will oversee the attraction of American capital and companies to work in Ukraine. Today, Trump's Ukraine Special Representative Keith Kellogg also made a significant statement. He says that international partners should help Ukraine with reconstruction by developing a Marshall Plan for Ukraine worth hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, just like after World War II for Western Europe. It's interesting that as soon as the news came out that Trump was heading an American investment fund for Ukraine's reconstruction, some European countries immediately expressed their willingness to allocate their money to this project. I'm Alexei Pichi. It's July 10th next. We'll discuss this topic's details. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, give a like, write any comment, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. Today, a conference on Ukraine's reconstruction was held in Rome. And at this conference, the United States Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, spoke and presented the Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. As Bessent stated, this American fund will be personally headed by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and it was created to mobilize American companies, resources, money, and specialists for the reconstruction of Ukraine. Next is a quote from Bessent. Thanks to sound macroeconomic management and strong foreign investment, Ukraine's economic future will be much stronger than its past. The Reconstruction Investment Fund is the key to unlocking this successful future. The United States will work to ensure that no individual state or company that finances the Russian war machine or supplies it will receive any benefit from the reconstruction of Ukraine. And there's one very important point here that shows that Trump has really, as they say, set his sights on Ukraine. In other words, he sensed that a lot of money could be made from the reconstruction of Ukraine. The thing is, just last week it became known that the largest American investment company suspended its search for investors for the Ukraine Reconstruction Fund after Trump won the United States elections. According to some sources, the publication planned to announce the creation of this investment fund. In fact, today in Italy, at that very conference on the reconstruction of Ukraine, but apparently Donald Trump's team convinced them to step out of the game and give this idea personally to Donald Trump. So look at what happened. The largest American investment company was supposed to raise money for the reconstruction of Ukraine, but suddenly refused to do it, even though they had already been working in this direction for about a year. And then suddenly, purely by coincidence, it turns out that Donald Trump himself initiated and headed exactly the same investment fund for the reconstruction of Ukraine. Well, obviously, this is not a coincidence. Trump smelled the money. By the way, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, also spoke on this topic today. And he, just like Kit Kellogg, stated that a Marshall Plan-style approach is needed to rebuild Ukraine, and a coalition with clear leadership, hinting at Trump. Quote, a systematic approach is needed, a coalition with clear leadership of countries and companies that can lead and bring others along. And we also need a clear recovery plan. That's why Europe has enjoyed peace and economic growth for many years. And now we have a real opportunity to ignite a new wave of progress. We need a Marshall Plan-style approach, and we must develop it together. Let me briefly remind you what the Marshall Plan is all about. It's an economic aid program for European countries after World War II. It was proposed at the time by the United States Secretary of State George Marshall in 1947, and it started operating the following year, in 1948. The plan for the reconstruction of Europe was developed at a meeting of European countries in the summer of 1947. By the way, the same Marshall Plan was offered to the Soviet Union and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics as satellites. However, this program was rejected at the time by the then dictator Joseph Stalin. Already on April 3, 1948, the United States Congress approved the plan, and it came into effect on the same day it was signed by United States President Harry Truman. And such an aid program was provided to Europe for 4 years. During this time, about $13 billion were allocated, which today would be $123 billion in the form of technical and economic assistance to support the recovery of European countries' economies. But it should also be understood that the recovery of Ukraine will not be easy, quick, or cheap. According to estimates by the Ukrainian authorities, the recovery and modernization of Ukraine will cost $1 trillion over a period of 14 years. This was stated today by the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Denis Shmyhal, and he noted that the government's concept provides for the creation of two funds in the amount of, for a total amount of $1 trillion. Next is a quote from Shmyhal. The first is the 540 billion Ukraine fund, which, according to the World Bank, is the exact cost to rebuild Ukraine. This fund will be formed from confiscated Russian assets as well as a special tax on the export of Russian raw materials. The European Structural Fund is providing $460 billion to support Ukraine. This will serve as a platform for investments by the European private sector in Ukrainian manufacturing. Europe deserves credit in this matter. According to Shmyhal, Ukraine's military expenses now amount to between $100 and $120 billion. In peacetime, and without taking weapons production into account, maintaining the Ukrainian army will cost 50 billion euros per year. And it turns out that Europe is ready to cover at least half of this amount, which, by the way, it is already doing. Well, what else is interesting? Today, after the announcement that Trump has headed the Ukraine Recovery Fund, the Dutch foreign minister stated that his country will allocate 300 million euros to support the recovery of Ukraine during this and next year. And here it's important to understand that the amount itself isn't what matters, but rather where this money is being spent. In 2025, the Dutch government will spend 52 million euros on the restoration of energy infrastructure and water supply systems in Ukraine. And another 30 million euros will be allocated to support Dutch companies and organizations that contribute to the recovery and sustainable development of Ukraine. In simple terms, these will be subsidies for Dutch companies that are ready to work in Ukraine, and this will encourage Dutch companies to enter Ukraine. This crucial fund allocation will likely inspire many European countries to follow the Netherlands' lead. That's all for now. Let us know your thoughts and takeaways in the comments. If you want to support the work of this channel, you can do so financially with any donation. You can use the links and payment details in the description of this video or the QR code on your screen. Subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and like the video. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.